Information, inspiration, motivation. You're now listening to the Going North podcast, where you're going to get all three of those things and more. I'm your host, author, speaker, and book enthusiast, Dom Brightman. And every week, we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now, let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we have, you guessed it, another author, but not just any author. This wonderful author right here is a licensed physician in the wonderful city and land of Baltimore, Maryland. And she has been on a spiritual quest since becoming a physician in 1978. And she's been discovering that science does not have the answers to explain the fleeting existence of life, nor its obscure beginning. This wonderful lady right here has all sorts of experience, and she is a multiple author, especially of the book titled Words from Awaki. And you're probably wondering, who is this wonderful author you have on the podcast today, Dom? It's the one, the only, Dr. Bernetha George. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm great, thank you, Dom. Thanks for asking. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, doing great, too. It's a great day.
It is. Nice, warm, not hot like South Carolina, where I might want to be right now, but it's good. All is good, and all is well.
Oh, yes, indeed. South Kakalaka, land of the porches and the pecans and the sun.
Yes, definitely the pecans. In my particular hometown, we have a pecan festival, which has already happened for the summer, but it's a lot of fun.
Sweet. Does anyone dress up as a giant pecan?
You know, I don't know. Gives me an idea for next year. Yeah. Yeah. Great idea.
Sweet. So as with all introductions, I'm pretty sure there's some things I've missed. So mind telling us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you currently are?
Well, I said South Carolina. That's where I was born. And something unique about that is I was born into the sharecropping era. That's one step above slavery. The process is your family hooks up with a white owner, almost always, of a large farm, and you bring your children. My mom and dad had 9. You bring these children and yourself, and you farm the children out, or you promise the children out and yourself to work this farm. And you give whatever portion, really, they require of your work in exchange for your upkeep, your food, your shelter, your clothing, everything. And at the end of, you work the farm, you do the whole process of planting, gathering, and then the owner sells it. And the owner then takes from that whatever he feels you owe for the period of time that you work with him for the provisions he's given you, like food, shelter, clothing, whatever. And I mention that because so often now we don't see slavery as a real thing. It's like something in the history book. Well, for me, it's not something in the history book. It's part of my life. One step up. And I say it's one step up from slavery only because you get to choose to live that life. Slavery, as you know, it was imposed upon people. But this sharecropping was a way that my family, my parents, felt that they could raise their children and get them going. And so I hasten to say that it worked. It was a horrible existence, but as a result of it, all 9 of us were able to be educated. All 9, as a result of the way that we were raised, were able to go on to get out of high school, go on to secondary learning, higher learning, college, nursing school, law school. As you see, I'm a physician. So that was the beginning of my life, and this is where I have ended up, and I'm still currently practicing medicine. So it was a trip, it was a journey, but it all ended in a nice arrival, I would say. I'm happy to be where I am in life. So that's basically my that's my story. From a sharecropper, a step up from slavery, to traveling through all of the other little stops, high school, college, medical school, and now working as a doctor.
There you go. Beautiful indeed. Beautiful indeed. Well, it was not the slavery part anyway. That definitely was beautiful. That was far from it. Yeah, my parents actually had to go through the same thing, especially my dad, because he was also part of the sharecroppers too, and where his family was always shortchanged at the end of every year and just give them pennies when the folks would make hundreds of dollars in all reality. It was really tough back then.
To say and tough is pretty much everybody's existence. If you're African American in the United States of America, there's just different levels of toughness. Today, any child being born, any African American child, any black child being born in America, will have a similar story. The details will be different, but the overall existence will be the same. It will be tough. So as I look around Baltimore, I see daily toughness. I see young people coming up with to me asking for $1. Young people who should be in high school. I see how different, this is new for me, how different races of people on the streets of Baltimore with cardboard signs asking for support for their daily living. And young children, 7, 8, 9 years old, running between cars with squeegee apparatus and a bottle of Windex or some bottle of water. Can I clean your car? Let me clean your car. I want to. So that's tough. So whether it is sharecropping or whether it's growing up in the various urban areas of America, for black folk, our existence has always, and I think until things change on several levels, will be tough.
Yes, ma'am, indeed. But despite all that, you're able to overcome all of that and become a doctor. So what led to the decision to become a doctor?
That's the whole point of it. That's why I wanted to make that point, that in spite of our beginnings, there comes a time when we get to choose where we go from there. That time arrives for all of us. When you get to make a choice of where will you end up, where do you want to end up, and how will you get there? And for me, I initially started out as a school teacher, about 7 years, and during the 1970s, when integration became the law of the land, education for, again, blacks became very tough. Black males were deliberately taken from the schools as administrators and as teachers. And then ultimately black women were driven out of the school systems. And as you saw this happening, you saw black children being miseducated, not educated, to the extent that there was a doctrine put into place, the doctrine of benign neglect. And when that came in America, when that became the manner in which education was doled out to black children, I quit. I quit teaching. And when I quit teaching, and I'm not saying I resigned or I retired, I just literally quit because the weight, the fight back, the pushback against that was overwhelming to me, and a lot of people didn't see it. So we just got chopped away. So I quit and looked for another way to be of service to people, to mankind, black people specifically, and because there was the greatest need. And then I looked to medicine, and I just applied to medical school in New Jersey. I was living in New Jersey at that time. And, excuse me, I was accepted. And, again, medical school, residency, training, and that's how I became a practicing physician.
Awesome indeed, awesome indeed. So from education to healing and leading all the way down to authorship, the business of immortality. And written 3 books, right?
2 so far. I think that the fact that you said I've written 3, that sort of confirms to me that another one is on the way. A friend of mine, before I even knew I'd be writing books, told me that I would write a book. And I said, okay. I never thought of myself as an author. And when it came upon me to write the first one, I dedicated it to him because I said, he said to me that I would write this book even before I knew that I could. And then later he told me, you will write 2 books. So I wrote a second book. And he has since said to me, I will write 3 books. So I don't know where the 3rd book is, but it's somewhere in me. And I accept the fact that I don't know when, how, or under what circumstances, but I will be writing a 3rd book. And that it's probably going to be, and I'm just guessing, it's probably going to be another Words from Awaki type book because it's turning out to be a series. The initial book came as a result of an encounter that I had with what we call angels. They didn't refer to themselves as angels. They said that they were emanations of God's thought, second emanations of God's thought, God, angels, and then man. And having had that encounter in Baltimore in 1996, I became obsessed with knowing more about that because, as you said in the introduction, I had been on a quest for spiritual enlightenment, and I thought different. I just sort of looked around, and did not know how to approach it. But I had things developed, opportunities arose, such that I did get into studies with people who helped guide my path. And on that path, that's how I came in contact with this particular session, with this encounter with these angels, and wrote the book. I was able to write it because my insatiable appetite for knowing and my spirituality, the visitation that began November of 1995 and ended June of 1996 were experienced by, maybe 70 to 100 people. I only had one encounter, but there were at least 40, 50 people who had encounters, but I had no knowledge of their encounters. Their encounters were taped, audio taped, and ultimately videotaped, and then transcribed. Well, 2 years after the encounters concluded, all of the material from everyone's session was made available to me. And the information that is contained in those encounters is otherworldly. It's unbelievable, but true. And I read it from 1998. I read the transcripts, looked at the tapes, listened to the audio tapes from 1998 till 2007. That's a lot. That's a lot of years, almost 9 to 10 years. And at the end of the summer of 2007, had this strong inclination, I'll use those terms, to write about what I had been reading. So that's the first book, Words from Awaki, the Third and Final Covenant. And then I continued to read the same material, looked at the same videos, and 7 years later, 2014, I had another strong inclination to write about what I was reading, but in a more in-depth manner. Not my thoughts. I just put out verbatim the material that I had been reading. Not every word of it, but enough of it. I'd say 85% of the material that was given to us, I put that in the second book, and that's Words from Awaki, the Third and Final Covenant, Volume 2. Those are the unabridged, unchanged words from the people who were in attendance and from the entities that they encountered. So that's the second book. The first book, again, is my thoughts about what was said, with an adding of the quotes from the angels themselves. The second book is just my reporting, reporting out in an organized manner, the notes, the raw notes. And that's Words from Awaki, the Third and Final Covenant, Volume 2. So the third book is probably somewhere in me. I don't know what it is. I know what I would like for it to be. I would like to have the accounting of the experiences of the people who were in attendance, these 40 to 50 people, whatever numbers are still available. I would love to do an interview of them and see what they thought of their experience, what has happened with them since they've had the encounter, and what they see and what they think of what's going on in the world now relative to what they were told. That's what I would like to write about. So those are my books, and that's how I came to do that, and that's why I did it. People need to know that this happened, and in today's world, it's difficult. People are so cynical. It's very difficult for people, and people are so faithless. People really don't believe in the possibility of things being possible. That's just how we are made, and we don't struggle against that. We don't struggle to develop faith, to believe. But that's one of the points of the book, that we must develop faith. We must begin to believe in the possibility of all things being possible. And then once we begin to believe that, then we must become obedient to that we hear. For example, to use myself, when I heard in 2007 that I should write that book, I had no idea that I could, but in my faith I knew that I could, so I wrote it. And that was the faith, and my obedience was, okay, I wrote it, knowing that people would not believe it, knowing that it was going to be a great expense, that I'm just putting something out there that no one is even going to really pick up and look at, because they just don't believe. But I did it anyway, because there will come a time when as we move forward, that people will believe it. They will seek this information out. They will need to know when this change that we're experiencing now began and the circumstances under which it began. And that's why I put it out there. And the raw material, they need to know that it's untainted. This is exactly the way it went, what was said. The first book, as I said, was my thoughts. The second was my simply reporting what was said by all that were there. And as I said, the third one I hope will be, again, an authentic reporting of what people thought, what they saw, and how they felt. I don't know if that will happen, but that's what I would like to have happen. I'd like to have a third book of that so that we would have a sequence of a literary sequence of our occurrences as times changed on this earth. So that's my aspiration. That's what I aspire to, and that was my motivation. That's why I wrote it. Why I wrote that, and hopefully people will rise to the level of acceptance. They will develop the faith to believe in it being possible for them to encounter angels, because they will. The time will come when they will, and it will not be foreign or, oh, they're nuts, or all of that will pass. It won't be tomorrow, but it will certainly be. And I have these books out as evidence for those who do believe that it did occur, and those who begin to encounter and who allow themselves to be open to the point to have these encounters will have something that they can put, a piece of literature that they can put their hands on and say, yeah, see, this is it. Being a scientist, being a scientist, I know how important it is to have research available to you for you to look back to see what was and what is, and accurate reporting of both of those things. And that's what this writing and this work is. That's what this work does for me.
Great indeed. So I'm guessing part 3 will probably be Words from Awaki, the Aftermath.
That's a good thought. That's a very good thought. So may have to dedicate the next book to you, Dom, because you've given it its title.
Oh, yeah.
And, Dom, I have to say now, we unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it's not a commercial piece. I mean, it's not like we're going to reap a lot of financial benefits, but I promise you we will reach a lot of enlightening benefits. We'll be turning on the lights in the lives of a lot of people who are living in darkness. So it would be a great thing to be a part of that. I'm excited about it as people read it. And it's not for everybody. Let me say that. Everybody's not able to read this book. Everybody's not able to. It's almost like the Bible. You can pick up the Bible and you can read it. You put it down. You have no clue what it is you've just read. And then you pick up the book and you read it. And it's like, wow, that's exactly what I needed to hear. You have to be ready. You have to be in the right place, in the right space. And you can't determine that. It's sort of like it's a just is kind of thing. So this book is here for people who are willing to see if they're ready, if they're there. And anyone who gets this book, I would say to them, if you pick up this book and you aren't able to read it the first time, don't even be concerned. Just put it on the shelf. And when your time comes for you to read that book, you'll pull it off the shelf, sit down and read it. You might be able to read it cover to cover. Or you might only be able to read one chapter, but that chapter will be the chapter that you needed at that time in your life.
Yeah, and you are right. I mean, everything is not for everybody. I mean, the book itself, it goes into some deep things. But one thing I did like, line I did underline, was it mentioned that music is the language of the soul, which is really true because that's something that can break language barriers.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that is true. Music is the language of the soul. And I don't think anybody can argue with that, because we have, I guess what comes to my mind right now is Michael Jackson. I don't think there's been a greater musician and artist than Michael Jackson to come on this planet. And he did not speak every language known to man, but his music touched every soul that heard him on this planet. And I think that's just in a practical sense, that's, again, being a scientist, I need proof. I need to have something tangible to point to. And I point to Michael as evidence of music being the language of the soul.
Very true. Best-selling artist of all time, no matter what they say with the fake articles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not about our judging. Again, I like what is. What you think of it means that's what you think of it, and that's all that means. It doesn't alter the fact that he, in his music, communicated with all who heard him, even though he did not speak their language. And music, being the language of the soul, to me, means that souls recognized what was being said, because his soul was speaking the language of their soul. So yes, that was one of my strong beliefs, and so that's the evidence that I offer. I can't think of a better person to have demonstrated that, proved that. To me, it's proof.
I got face of evidence indeed. Rest in peace, as they say. So, with publishing both books, what advice would you give to those who are looking to one day finally publish their own books?
First thing, conceive of the idea. If the idea comes to you, that's the conception. You now the idea has come to you, so you've already conceived it. You've already put it in your head. It's already come to your head. Either you put it there, or it's been put there. Believe. Once it's put there, believe that it's a reality. That this can happen. You must believe that. Oh yeah, this can happen, and then achieve. You follow the promptings, the suggestions, the thoughts, the ideas that come to you to help you achieve that. So it's important for you to conceive it, believe it, then you will achieve it. Okay, and in doing those things, you must have faith. You must be able to believe that it's possible. Believe in the possibility of all things being possible. That's your faith. You must have faith. And then you must be obedient. Obedient. If the thought comes to you to speak to someone, give them, your spiel on what your thoughts are about what you might like to do that. Might be a stranger. Your mind may say, hey, look, ask that person. They may know something about how to publish books. Ask them. And then watch and see what happens. Okay? That person might be able to guide you in terms of, you may look at it and say, God, I don't have any money. No publisher is going to publish my, If you take that attitude of it can't happen or it won't happen, you're right, it won't, because you'll make sure it doesn't. But if you take the attitude that this can happen for me, I can make this happen, the chances of it's happening are high. High. As I said, I'm not an author. I'm not a journalist. I'm a physician. And I've published 2 books, self-published. That's the other thing. If you can't find an author, if you can't find a publishing company to publish your book, look into publishing it yourself. There are companies out there that will publish for you, so seek them out. Publish it yourself. Get the material out there. Get it out there. Get what's in your mind. Guess what's in you. Get it out on paper. Okay? So that would be my advice. Thought comes to you, that's your conception. Conceive. Believe that you can do it. Believe. Achieve it. Follow your mind. Follow your thoughts. Be obedient to what comes into you as to how to get your book out.
Beautiful. And I guess in a way, obedience can also tie in with discipline, right?
Absolutely. 100%. It is imperative. You must be disciplined. You must be disciplined. You must be disciplined. With a disciplined mind, you can achieve anything. The disciplined mind, you can achieve anything. And I repeat that, Dom, I think I'm happy that you said that, because to say to yourself, oh, okay, I will do this, and then you begin to procrastinate, that's a clear sign of lack of discipline. You cannot procrastinate and achieve anything in life, because your procrastination will keep you stuck in that place that you're trying to leave. What overcomes procrastination is discipline. If you say you're going to make a phone call to a person regarding X at a given time, then do that. Little things. Practice disciplining yourself. Practice taking yourself to the place that you say you're going to go. I'm going to do X, then do X. Don't, give yourself plenty of excuses as to why not to do it. Do it. Life's lessons. That's what we're talking about. How to live and achieve that you want. Not someone else, that you want. Discipline. If you say it, do it. If you know that you need to do it, do it. If it's to your advantage to do it, do it. Action. Take action. And only you can do it. I mean, no one can do things for you that you must do for yourself. And that's pretty much everything. That's pretty much everything. You must do, and you must move yourself to the point of doing it. Hold yourself responsible. Hold yourself accountable. All of those things are discipline. That's what is meant by discipline. Say it and do it.
Since you mentioned life lessons, if you were 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2018, what advice would you give to yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say to myself, walk in faith and have no fear. Guard your total health as if your life depended on it, because it does. Your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your financial health, because it does. So I tell myself two things. First, walk in faith and have no fear. And secondly, I would say, guard your total health as if your life depended on it, because it does. Your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, and your financial health. That's my advice to me.
Beautiful indeed, especially guard your total health. Folks always say guard your heart, guard your mind, but folks they really say guard your total health, which is very important. You got to guard all of it.
Yeah.
Well, all right, for those who want to keep in touch with you and keep up with what you're doing and possibly find out when book number 3 may make its birth into the world, how do we keep in contact with the wonderful Dr. George?
I'm available by email at bgeorgemd, my first initial, the first initial of my first name, my last name, and MD at AOL.com, bgeorgemd at AOL.com. I can also be found on Facebook at Bernetha George, MD. And that's BERNET, T as in Tom, HA. That's the spelling of my first name, Bernetha George, MD. That's how you can find me on Facebook.
Sweet. Well, there you have it, folks. Go on ahead and follow her on the Facebooks and shoot her an email and all that wonderful smooth jazz, and pick up some copies of the Words from Awaki book. Both copies, I should say. Heck, just go for 5 copies of both, and then give them out to your friends and family and leave some reviews. So that way, if she decides to make it a trilogy, that folks will know about it and already have a step ahead of the game.
Thanks a bunch for your listening ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you really, really enjoyed that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family, especially those who love podcasts and love listening to some inspiration and motivation. And if you'd like to connect with me directly, feel free to shoot me an email at dombraidman@gmail.com. Make the rest of your week the best of your week.